Okay, so let's tackle the inciting incident. Given that my character is a certain way and she has a certain problem, what would cause her to leave her comfort zone and consider doing something different? And if you remember from the first webinar we did, this is the inciting incident question that you use to brainstorm your inciting incident. And I decided that given Elise is not able to fight back and her problem is that she and her mother are stuck with this cruel stepfather, the question becomes, what would cause her to leave her comfort zone and consider doing something different? What was her comfort zone? Her comfort zone has been she's been keeping her head down and trying not to anger her stepfather on the assumption that that is going to cause him to be less cruel. But what would cause her to leave this comfort zone? Basically, the stepfather would need to step up the cruelty in a way that makes it clear that it doesn't matter if Elise keeps her head down or not, the cruelty is going to continue. So maybe he beats her mother more severely than he ever has in the past, or maybe it's the first time he beats her mother, or maybe that he's been beating her mother and he hints that he's gonna start beating Elise next if she doesn't fall in line. Whatever it is we decide that the stepfather is doing to be cruel, he's going to do that in a more intense way. And Elise is going to realize, hey, it doesn't matter how good a stepdaughter I am going to have a worse and worse and worse life. And that makes it worth it to her to step out of her comfort zone and try something different. So looking at how you tie this inciting incident to the character arcs, we have to ask ourselves, how does this inciting incident trigger the heroine's disempowerment? And how does the inciting incident trigger the hero's wound? Because remember, the disempowerment and the wound are those two growth arcs. So how does Rutherford's latest acts of cruelty trigger Elise's disempowerment? Whatever he does to her mom that makes her feel more scared than ever before, she's going to feel completely helpless. She's going to realize that if she ever wants to escape from her situation, she's going to need help from someone else. So this is going to be her motivation for trying to bargain with the rebels, and this is why she's going to contact Jonathan for help. How does Rutherford's latest act of cruelty trigger Jonathan's wound? And remember, that's gonna come from his backstory, since his wound is in his backstory. Because he was hurt before by the abuse of a woman he loved at the hands of British soldiers, when Jonathan hears how Rutherford is treating Elise and her mother, he's going to be angry. He's going to discourage Elise from spying on Rutherford, though, because he thinks Rutherford is going to kill Elise. So he's going to be torn there. He's going to be like, oh, I really want the information you're offering me, but I also don't want to see you get killed because I've already watched one woman be tortured to death at the hands of these evil British. So lay low and trust me. I'll figure out how to drive in the next month. We've got a plan for getting rid of the British. So just hang in there and trust us. Please don't risk yourself. And I just want to point out here that even though it's the inciting incident for Jonathan, he is not taking the call. He's going to say, no, I don't want to get involved in this adventure that you have started, Elise. I have another plan. So there's going to be some romantic conflict around that. And it's totally up to you if you want your hero to be in immediately or if you don't. I think it's going to be more interesting in this story if he's not immediately in and Elise has to go to extremes to get his help. So now we still have to, we've tied the inciting incident to the two growth arcs. We still have to tie in the romance arc. So how does the inciting incident change the way that the hero and heroine feel about each other? Because remember, the changes in how they feel about each other is how you show them falling in love. So given that Elise's stepfather has become more cruel, and that's intensified her desire to escape with her mother, how does this change the way she feels about Jonathan? I think that Elise, before she needed help, she knew Jonathan, but she didn't really have a relationship with him. And then she found out that he was the leader of the local revolutionaries, and so now she's looking at him as someone who can help her escape. He's going to represent hope to her. This early in the story, she doesn't really know him that well as a person. He's just someone who could possibly help her. But he'll be symbolic. He'll be symbolic of the hope that she is trying to realize through the course of her story arc. So we're also going to have to look at how this is going to affect Jonathan in the romance arc. So given that Elise has come to Jonathan for help and is offering to endanger herself in return, how is this going to change how Jonathan feels about her? He's going to stop thinking of her as an acquaintance. He didn't know her that well before she came to him. But now that she's come to him and said, look, I'm willing to risk myself. Will you please help me? Now he's starting to think of her as a burden. Basically, he didn't have any responsibility for her. And now he feels guilty that she's going through this suffering and he doesn't have an immediate way to help her. So if you're looking for ways to push and pull in the romance arc so that your romance doesn't feel like the characters immediately fall in love, thinking about how they are a problem for each other, especially at the beginning of the story, sets up a romantic conflict. So you do want to think about that. You don't want your characters. One of the mistakes that people make with romance is they think of shows like Moonlighting, where the characters, the hero and the heroine, just fought all the time, fight, and they seem to hate each other, and it's like they're screaming, and all of a sudden they're kissing, and that sort of dynamic. First of all, it's extreme. It's not how most relationships develop, and setting it up believably is very, very, very difficult. Is much of the romance that you read, the characters do not hate each other and then just suddenly decide they like each other. They have genuine problems that arise from the relationship. If Elise and Jonathan do what each other wants, their lives get more complicated. Jonathan doesn't just love Elise. He doesn't immediately fall in love with her. She's a pretty woman who comes to him and he's like, she's a problem. She's asking me to do the stuff that is going to mess me up. It's not good. It interferes with my plans to attack the armory. And now I feel guilty if I help her and I feel guilty if I don't.